actions speak louder than words. I learned that one the hard way, and probably not in the way that you think. Because for a long time, I thought if I could just explain it better, they'd get it. If I could just find the right words or the right tone, the right timing, the right combo of everything, right? And calm and firm, then I'd finally be understood, finally be heard. But here's what I learned. When someone is committed to misunderstanding you, you can't talk your way into being respected. And more importantly, you can't argue someone into showing up for you. So this is for the people who are tired of repeating yourself, tired of long emotional essays, tired of trying to communicate your feelings to someone who maybe just nods, agrees, and does the same thing over and over again. Or maybe they disagree and you argue. I don't know. But this is about choosing actions instead of arguments. And before we go any further, remember to take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and always use your own discernment because you're your best guide. Welcome back, loves, and if you're new here, welcome. Excuse, please, any background noise, as you know, or maybe not if you're new. I have fur babies, familiars, so you may hear them from time to time, and right now we actually have construction going on in the neighborhood, so... So I've got some music going for you guys. Hopefully that's enjoyable and you can still hear me fine. So when I say actions instead of arguments, I'm not talking about being petty. I'm not talking about revenge or playing games or just trying to get a reaction. I'm talking about aligned action, okay? The kind of action that protects your peace, that honors your self-respect, the kind of action that stops bleeding energy into a situation that keeps proving it doesn't even deserve it. And at a certain point, repeating yourself isn't mature, right? It's just you trying to convince someone to care? So what does aligned action look like? Sometimes it looks like you communicating once clearly, not 10 times or in 10 different ways or in a calmer voice or an angrier voice, right? One clear truth. And then you let behavior meet consequence. What I mean by that is not punishment, not spite, not some dramatic announcement, okay? But reality. Because boundaries aren't something you explain over and over. Boundaries are something you set, something you live, right? My boundaries aren't up for debate. So, hear me when I say that aligned action is clear, it's quiet, it doesn't have to be loud and chaotic. It's definitely not a performance, okay? It's kind of like a recalibration. It's, okay, I see what this is. I see what you're choosing. I see how you're moving, and I'm going to respond with clarity. And yes, sometimes aligned action means cutting some people off. Sometimes it means stepping back far enough that you stop absorbing the consequences of their choices. Sometimes it means letting people's karma finally catch up with them because you're no longer jumping in to soften that landing. And that's not cruel, okay? That's balance. So I'll give you some real life examples because this is maybe where it will click for you. Someone needs to hear this. I dated this guy for a while, right? Who I felt didn't respect my time. At first, I tried to communicate it. I talked. I was texting paragraphs. Each time he did, I explained how it made me feel when he'd be busy, and then suddenly expect me to drop everything, including work at times, you guys, the second he decided that, he was available. And I realized he understood what I was saying. He just didn't care enough to actually do anything about it because my availability was convenient for him, right? So I stopped arguing and I became very busy too. Not as a game, not as revenge, not to teach him a lesson, although it's tempting, right? But because I was done rearranging my life for someone who wouldn't even acknowledge the value of my time. And that was very apparent in his actions, right? And guess what? He got the message. He got the message loud and clear. And that's aligned action. Okay, another example. My sister never thought any of my issues were important. She always wanted me to put her first, but she didn't offer the same in return. So instead of fighting about it, like we had in the past, instead of trying to convince her that, my issues mattered too, whatever they may have been at the time. I stopped sharing my entire life with her. I stopped sharing certain details with her. I didn't announce it. I didn't make it a whole thing. I just moved differently. And that told the truth louder than any speech ever could, because she noticed, right? Because when someone just keeps showing you that they won't hold your vulnerability with care, then that aligned action looks like removing access to that vulnerability. And maybe your examples aren't that deep or dramatic, okay? This isn't about, what happened to me. Those are examples that kind of, maybe help you understand it, and that's fine too. They don't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's something simple. Maybe it's you keep telling someone, maybe your kids or your spouse, to put the toilet paper roll back on. You've said it nicely, you've said it irritated, nothing changes, right? So instead of fixing it and then getting angry and then turning it into something, let's say you leave it. You stop compensating. Okay, you stop silently making it your job, or stop arguing. And they notice that more than any words, right? Because your words can be ignored. But when those toilet paper rolls start piling up, or they go to the bathroom and there's no toilet paper, right? That's harder to ignore. But that moment, your energy shifts, the moment your effort changes, the moment your presence or whatever it is that you've been putting into it stops carrying the whole thing, then reality becomes impossible to miss. And that is the whole point. Okay? Now, I want you to be honest with yourself. Sometimes we're better at this in some areas than we are others, right? That's life. Some of you are amazing at boundaries at work, but you crumble in your love life. Some of you can cut off strangers instantly, but you keep bleeding for family members. Some of you can enforce standards with clients, but you tolerate crumbs from your so-called friends. So if you're listening to this and realizing that maybe you've been arguing in circles too, and maybe it's just one specific area, not your whole life, that is awareness. And awareness is the beginning of the aligned action, right? Because again, revenge is when you mean to hurt them. Okay, and that's not what we're talking about. Aligned action is meant to honor you. One is poison tipped at someone else, right? And the other is kind of a compass that's pointing inward, okay? It's self-care. So if you've been stuck in that loop of maybe over-explaining or crying or arguing, just trying to be heard, then hear this. If your words aren't landing, your energy will, or lack thereof, right? If your feelings aren't being respected, your presence will change. If your needs aren't being honored, your access will shift. Not because you're trying to just prove a point, but you're also protecting your peace. When you're done trying to talk reality into changing, then you're ready to move in alignment with what reality is already showing you. You're already getting the signs, right? And that's what grown healing looks like. Not necessarily getting louder, but getting clearer, right? Not more emotional labor, more self-respect. Not another argument, another decision. Now, I want to close with a message from Spirit and an affirmation for you, because I can feel how many of you needed permission. Spirit says, stop trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your soul does not need to audition for respect. Let your boundaries do what your words couldn't. When you stop absorbing the consequences of someone else's actions, balance returns. Let karma do her job. And here's your affirmation. Say it with me, even if your voice shakes. And if you can't say it aloud, you can say it in your mind, write it down, however you feel called to do. I honor myself with aligned action. I do not argue for what I deserve. I trust what people show me, and I move accordingly. My peace is protected, my energy is sacred, and I choose myself without guilt. If this hit home, remember to like, subscribe, share, all the things to keep our sanctuary alive. Sending you light, love, and healing, and I hope this helped.